Well, this is a very, very exciting day for both Trina and myself because it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, something that is blessedly a holiday now in the United States. And we thought that this would be a good day to feature some of the things that Trina has done through the years regarding civil rights and just rights for everybody. And I think with that, I'll hand it on over to you because I know you've got some important things to say about this, Trina.
Oh, Scott. I remember so many adventures related to Martin Luther King. I remember where I was at the time of the different things that happened in the South. And I remember particularly my very first adventure with the civil rights movement. What had happened before that, Scott, and that's where this black and white hands come. So maybe we want to take a good look at that, Scott, like that it didn't have the word to color on. That came after George Floyd, or recent times. But the other part, Scott, was I went to a meeting. I was at Grailville. That's 20 miles from Cincinnati. And we didn't do these things ordinarily. But one day we heard that the United Nations Day was going to be there, and they were going to raise the peace flag of the United Nations early in the morning on the United Nations Peace Day. So a bunch of us got in the car and we drove in. And I'd never done anything like this before because it wasn't typical. This is 1963. And we got in there early and there was nobody else there in a government square where the big flagpole was. And we sort of wandered around and I didn't know what was going to happen at all. And then this group of women, older women, came in and they unfurled this banner. Scott, I think it was 20 feet wide. It said, "This is the only flag to which we pay allegiance." And it was a big picture of an American flag. And none of us had any poster or symbol or pin or anything to show what we were standing there for. We wanted peace in the world, and we wanted to stand for the nations being united. The only flag that we wanted the UN flag to be there, not against the American flag, but this was a kind of a scary moment. And who got her picture taken in front of that flag? Me. Okay. So we went back to Grailville, and at that time I was in charge of the art center, and I was having little art classes. So the next week we had a bunch of black cardboard that was given to us, and we all took white paper and we cut it or we painted on the black cardboard, piano keys, tic-tac-toe, everything where it showed black and white images working together. And I came up with this hands that was just cut with a razor blade on white paper and then pasted onto one of our many black signs. And then we had this planned rally for the civil rights in Cincinnati, and we carried these things in with us. Oh, it was wonderful. 30,000 people showed up, and we had about 50 posters of these big posters with black and white hands and all these other things, this piano keys and everything where you could see people working together or the colors working together or the designs working together. And it was such a great experience. I resolved never to go to a demonstration without a sign or a symbol to show what I believed in. And I never have. I always carry something that shows what side I'm on, what I believe in. And you're doing that both for those others with you, but more for the people standing by gawking and wondering, what's this all about? Why are these people out here making a noise or whatever they're making, or just walking up the street or yelling or chanting or whatever they're doing? So that's what I did. Now this image here is probably the most iconic, one of the most iconic things I've ever done in my life, because it's gone every place. All kinds of groups have used it. And the most inspiring place was that they used it then for this International Women's YWCA program, where they brought women from 22 countries from around the world. And I was hired in the beginning part of 1969, And they paid for me to come back from Paris, where I was after I was evacuated from Egypt. So that's how I got back here, that they paid for it. The YWCA paid for it, and I was part of the staff, and I was the only Catholic on the staff. I think they wanted because there had so many girls coming from Catholic countries for the arts. And this was the time of the rise of the Black arts movement and the Black theater in New York. And so we did a lot of that kind of thing. So this image became kind of the image that they used on mirrors and every place. And when I came to live here in Montclair, the YWCA was here, and I walked into it for the first time, and there was those hands painted in a floor-to-ceiling image in our YWCA that was here in Montclair. So it got really around. It's probably one of the most famous things I've ever had the blessing of doing. And it came that afternoon with a razor blade and some white paper. Something else that I think that's fun to see is that when we did our art production program, and during the time I was evacuated into Paris after Egypt, I was in Portugal, and they were good at tile. So we made a few tiles, and we did this tile. That's the only one I have that's left from that time. That was 1968. And Portugal, 1968. And then this is a pin I've more recently made that went along with the poster. This square poster that you see that's behind me has a place you can stick rods, and you put it in my front yard, like it's in my front yard right now, along with a yin and a yang, which shows the necessity of the black and white working together always.
And so what happens if you take one of the hands away, Trina?
Well, that's really what's special about this one. The other one just disappeared, Scott, and I think you knew that, so thank you, because this is really one of the fun things about this picture. We need each other. We need a diversity in this world. We need to work together and be so happy that we're different. And because how boring it would be if we're all the same and all the same color. So
yeah.
It might be. Yeah, go on.
You've done some other posters too, haven't you? Can we show a couple of those?
I'm so glad you have some of those, because that's kind of fun. Because of this desire that I had to provide posters, part of our Grail art production program, we made posters then that could be bought by people to use for their rallies, and so that they could see where they stood for. And of course, truth, justice, freedom, love is what you need to have peace. And so this is the recipe for peace. So
and here's one that we especially wanted to share, isn't it?
Yes, this is one of my, and I think of the Israeli-Palestinian situation. I think of the Russian-Ukrainian situation. And this thing is so true of so much. And this is a Black South African minister in Cry the Beloved Country, speaking to a little white boy who has to leave. And this Black one says to him, "I have one great fear in my heart, that one day when they are turned to loving, we are turned to hating." And that's certainly one of the powerful quotes that I know from my life, that whenever there's a terrible relationship between people, this can happen. And then even things can reverse, and the other side can start to hate and be as mean as the first side can. And so racism can work all kinds of ways. Hatred can work all kinds of ways. And we have to find a way for radical sharing, which has become certainly my desire and mantra for my life, to help foster radical sharing. And so thank you for having that to show, Scott. Thank you. What else do we have here? Do we have that picture of all the people in the street? Is that available? on the march.
I should actually do this. Yeah. So you were talking about how important it is to have posters available. And
Yeah.
what's the story? What's the story behind this one?
Oh, this is the front of my house, by the way. This is on Elm Street in Montclair. It's a county road, and it's a road that frequently is used when people have demonstrations and marches. Well, here's one that happened, and I heard it, the big noises out in the street, the band's playing, and I came running out with my poster there. You can see me in the poster. And there were these other people there that saw me in the poster, and some of them came off for a short time, and somebody else took some pictures. That's how this happened, quite spontaneously. And these are people from my town a couple of years ago during the mask time, right in front of my house. And it's just a lovely thing that happened, that we got a picture like that. That's a wonderful thing.
That's so much fun. That really is. I'm glad that you were able to get something like that.
And what you see about that size of that poster, that's the original size. That's one of the cardboard posters that happened. That happened before the square ones were made, and the ones that we did for the people can poke in their yards. This is just a paper poster with the cutout hands that I've kept all those years. Yes. So thank you.
What about the posters in the lower right-hand corner?
Well, they're pretty.
Do not kill.
Do not kill. Those are the words of Archbishop Romero. I don't know if you remember this man, 1960, 73 or so, or 80. I forget exactly when he was murdered. He was murdered saying mass in El Salvador. I was very active with that, and I actually made a costume. I could wear that someday for you, Scott. I have a bishop's hat and everything, and all these materials were thrown out by a bank. These velvets and things that I used for this getup, and I went to Washington with it. I bet I have a COINTELPRO. I've never wanted to really ask for my file because I probably have one for my activism and solidarity with El Salvador when we were supporting this murderous dictatorship there. Thou shalt not kill. No soldier has the obligation to kill his fellow men. Thou shalt not kill. And then next to it is that from injustice, never justice. And the opposite's true. So these were just things I grabbed quick before that picture was taken. So that's it. And Scott, to share a little bit the way I grew up. I'm a white suburban girl in Cleveland, Ohio, with people that came from the farm in the 1930s. In 1931, I was born. And so in the 1930s, I grew up in a totally white community in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. And we were a mixture of 90 families on the short street, and then a handful of Jewish families and a handful of Catholic families, and the majority were Protestant. And we got along just fine. We just all played together, and kids all played together in the street or played ball or went to the ravine behind our houses and did all kinds of wonderful things together. And then the neighborhood changed, and it became a very Jewish neighborhood where people walked every place on the Sabbath. And the local church became a synagogue for a while. And then they moved further east, and this became a very Black neighborhood. Now, my mother just lived there peacefully all through all these changes until she herself became blind and had to go to a home where she couldn't take care of the house anymore. So that's the neighborhood I grew up in. And my family gave me this tremendous gift, even though we were in a white suburban area. Never once did I hear my father or my mother speak badly about any group of people, so that when I got to be of age to do something, this really happened. My first introduction to other races and such happened at the Cleveland Art Institute, where because I was so skilled and talented with my sculpture already when I was young, I started when I was 8, finding clay in the ravine behind our house. And I was helping fire the kiln for Edgar Eckhart at the Cleveland ceramic people, one of the main people doing ceramic sculpture in this town, in the city. and I was 12. So I was also able to take classes. So I remember I went in, I was going to take a life sculpture class. So I would go into the room, and here, this little Catholic girl went in, and there was a black nude model sitting there. Well, I was kind of shocked. But
Yeah.
for about 10 minutes, Scott.
I'm going to interrupt you because before we went live, you were telling this story, and I just assumed that it was well, I assumed what the gender was, but I think it's important for you to point out what the gender of this black nude model was as well. Yes, by all means.
Line there, and just there, everybody was making sculptures of her. And after I saw the tremendous respect everybody had, every 15 minutes or so, she'd get up and put her kimono on and walk around and look at what people were doing, and then go back and sit and model again. And I remember seeing how beautiful the light fell on her skin and how beautiful it was. And I thought to myself, how could anybody think that my color is more beautiful than that color? I didn't think that was at all. So I was given these great gifts in my growing up that really have helped me ever since. I belong to a black parish right now, St. Peter Claver. All St. Peter Claver churches, by the way, are started as churches for the black Americans, because he was a Spanish Jesuit who gave his life at Cartagena as it called himself, the slave of the slave, helping those people who got off the boat as slaves and doing what he could to mitigate their suffering and change things around. So this is the background I come from, Scott. And I think, I don't know if we have a few minutes. Do we have any time at all to do that last?
We've got time, because you recently participated in what was it, a rally, or was it a protest, or?
I've become loved by the Koreans here. And I've been at a couple of things where I was asked to speak at the UN, giving my little 5 minutes. And this is a special thing. 70 years, folks, they have not had a peace treaty between North and South Korea. And it's us, the United States, that's kept that from happening. Both North and South Korea have wanted it many times, but we still have our troops there, and we're still doing it. Okay, here are some slides. This is at this thing. Now you have to imagine that this beautiful person who's black, who's the head of New York Peace Action, and I are sitting over there waiting for us to come up, and the Koreans start singing "We Shall Overcome," and and we walk up to the mic with this sign, and together, the two of us in our own black and white selves and the black and white hands there, as the Koreans are singing in English, "We shall overcome." And so we sing too. So I just want to sing and ask you to sing a couple of lines of this wonderful anthem we have for this day. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. And we'll walk hand in hand